Joining us now is Texas Congressman Keith Self. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Talk to us about your thoughts about President Trump so far. We're pushing 130 days in office. You guys are really doing a great job too. Talk to us just about what your thoughts are about the president.
Well, the president's doing a great job in spite of the obstacles that the judiciary is throwing in front of him. And I think the people realize it because the poll numbers are actually going up. Rasmussen, I think just today, said that he's back where he was on January 20th, the day he was sworn in. So this is good news.
It definitely is good news. And it's good news to see that you're fighting on behalf of we the people. Specifically, we know that you are the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, talking about election interference in the country of Poland as they are just a few days away from their second round of elections. Can you talk to us about this George Soros and USAID money interfering with that election? I saw you guys wrote a letter to the EU as well.
We did, because the EU is not doing their job. What's happening here is the George Soros Open Society Foundations, through several organizations, have been interfering with several nations' elections. Poland is up on Sunday, and we are very concerned that they will try to do in Poland what they've done in Albania and Romania. So this is interfering with the populist, the pro-democracy parties in Poland. It is specifically the Law and Justice Party. So those are the ones that they're trying to suppress. And we've written a letter to the EU because the EU ought to be speaking up about this. They ought to be condemning this activity, actually not encouraging it, which they are. They had a EU commissioner who said that, yes, we forced the Romanian constitutional court to overturn an election, and we may have to do the same thing in Germany. That's why we're writing this letter to Poland, because we are very concerned about the suppression of the pro-democracy populist parties in Europe.
Your X post is so perfectly written. It says, when it comes to dark money and election interference, all roads lead to George Soros. The EU should immediately condemn the corruption and election interference taking place in Poland. I love this part too, sir. Reject globalism, embrace true democracy by the will of the people. Can you say any more than that, sir?
Well, I can certainly emphasize it, because that's exactly what the EU ought to be doing. Rather than suppressing the voice of the people, they ought to be encouraging it. This is the tradition, the Western tradition, on which Europe and the United States are built. The individual voice, freedom of speech, is absolutely crucial. That's why it's in our First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. And I will tell you, this is a critical moment in Europe, because they now have 5 countries that the EU has allowed this to go on. And we need to stop it now before it gets to the big country of Germany, which is a vital anchor in Europe.
Exactly. And I'm looking up right now as we speak a post from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, talking about revoking visas for those that are trying to clamp down on free speech, including people from other governments. So it seems as if, obviously, sir, you're right in line with what's going on at the White House, at the Department of State. What's that 30,000-foot view now for we the people moving forward, hoping for more victories for our country?
Well, we need to stand firm in Europe, but we've got our own issues here, because we know that George Soros is all over the United States, getting his left-wing DAs in place. So that's what President Trump is also fighting here, election integrity in the United States. So we need to take a stand in Europe that will then translate to the United States. So I'm all for the tools in the toolbox that President Trump and Marco Rubio have. Let's use what we can.
Exactly. You know, a lot of people have spoken about the Soros money or the George Soros money, but you're really going on the record there to really tackle this issue. So first of all, thank you for doing that. And second, outside of letting the EU know about what's going on with the election interference, what other steps do you think need to be taken within Congress, but also maybe is it the DOJ? I mean, really looking into the corruption of I guess he's allowed to put the money where he wants to, but it's still involved in illegalities, is it not at all?
Well, it is in Europe, absolutely, and in Poland. If you look at what's happened in Poland, the Supreme Court actually in Poland said that they needed to release tens of millions of dollars to the Law and Justice Party that they are withholding. The Electoral Commission over there said the same thing, and the current government is just refusing to abide by it. So this is part of the problem. If you don't abide by the rule of law and you suppress the voices of the people, that's a very dangerous precedent. Poland needs to release that money to the Law and Justice Party. The EU needs to condemn that behavior by the current government, and they need to encourage the voice of the people to be heard on 1 June.
It's awesome, and that's just a couple days away, of course, the second round, because the first round, they didn't know who clearly got the 50% or more than 50%. So here we go to see who the president of Poland will be. Sir, thank you for doing the foreign work there. Back here in the States, we're just celebrating the 101st anniversary of Customs and Border Protection down there along Texas's border, the southern border. Your thoughts about our Customs and Border Protection patrol agents?
First of all, they're doing a magnificent job. The numbers have dropped over 99%. Tom Holman is doing a great job. He is the right man for the job. I'm just so excited about the way they have actually secured the border. If you think back to the election, securing the border was one of the two most important issues that people voted on. That was one of the two most important issues that got President Trump elected. He has delivered on the promise. Promises made, promises kept.
Also, the president having a rally on Friday, of course, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I want to get your thoughts on that. And then secondly, when you're in your districts there in Texas, can you talk to us about what constituents are talking about? Is everyone kind of like, hey, I'm glad we have a commander-in-chief that's on our side, a representative like you that's on their side? What's the consensus out there?
Well, President Trump's rallies are always an event. They're a destination. They're fabulous. And in my own district, we've got people that are questioning us. They want Congress to do several things. They want us to enact the DOGE cuts. They want us to enact to codify the executive orders. They want to rein in the government spending. So right now, since the border is taken care of, the other major issue, the economy, the spending, the out of control federal government is the issue of the day today.
And then what would you say to your colleagues over there in the Senate as they're looking at the big, beautiful bill and the need for it to be passed?
Well, we've got to pass the tax cuts, but that's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is we need the spending cuts, we need the savings, because if we only have tax cuts with no significant savings, the deficit and the debt are going to explode. So this is a package deal. Yes, the tax cuts are the crown jewel of this bill, but we've got to have the concomitant spending cuts to go along with it so that we don't drive our $36 trillion to $56 trillion over the next 10 years. The bond market is already kind of queasy on this issue. They don't know that they're going to be paid back because when you sell a bond, when the nation sells a bond, it's basically an IOU. We're going to give you money back at some period of time. If they don't think they're going to be repaid, if they're uncertain about the United States, then they're not going to buy the bonds, and it's the price of servicing the interest is only going to go up.
And finally, Congressman, thank you again for joining us. And if you're joining us right now here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, of course, Texas Representative Keith Self joining us. What would you like to say to we the people across the country right now? Any advice, any encouragement moving forward over the next great amount of time that we have the president and in the White House, but still to the future?
Well, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity right now. Control the House, control the Senate, control the presidency. We can use reconciliation at this moment. We've got to get the reconciliation through with tax cuts and spending cuts so that we see the impacts before the midterm elections. We need to take a very strong conservative message into the midterms, show success. The economy is responding. People are feeling like they have money in their pocket because we've left the money in their pocket through the tax cuts. This is vitally important for the midterms. Take a strong conservative message. Give us the opportunity to do that through the reconciliation bill.
Texas Congressman Keith Self. Sir, thank you again for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thank you.